So the theme of the conference is winning in the disruptive century, and you know, the disruption is a word that is frequently used these days. Those of you who came to lunch saw the McKinsey book, No Ordinary Disruption, that was handed out. Maybe it's a little overused, but I know you use it.
I do.
You use it with your staff regularly. I've heard you do it. Always disrupt yourself, you tell them. What do you mean when you say that?
Yeah, it is one of my favorites. And I think partly because we are 104 years old. John, how old is Wells?
164, but who's counting?
Excuse me. Okay, excuse me.
You win.
Okay, he's older
So
than
you're
me.
just a puppy.
Yeah, we knew this already. But I always say at 104, you know, if you've got to reinvent yourself many times. And we are the only one still here after this period of time in reinvention. And if I think back of all of the lessons I've learned and what I keep saying to the teams, a couple things. One is I say, you know, never protect your past. If that's what reinvention is, never protect your past. And so this is why I've divested, even in my time, as you know, $8 billion of businesses of ours, because they're not part of the future. They're better in someone else's hands, or you're not at scale for them. And so semiconductors, which, while hardware is 10% of IBM today, we did semiconductors for 60 years, 6-0. But this is part of better, we'll do the R&D, someone else can do the manufacturing. So don't protect your past. I think perhaps one of the, I find most valuable lessons is not that. It is this idea of don't define yourself as a product. And you know, while we both have products, this idea, if you think of yourself, in our case, I think what I do is enterprise innovation for companies like Wells. But the ingredients change. They keep changing, and we'll talk a little bit about how much they've changed in the industry. And you know, today, everyone wants to be digital. Tomorrow, I think the next business model is cognitive. And then the third thing is, you have to steward for the long term. John and I were just talking about this, what the pressure about making decisions that are for the long term is part of disruption, which means you've got to make big bets. And you make big bets with where you allocate your capital, your resources.
Yeah, and we should keep talking about that. I just want to point out a couple of things to the audience. One is Don Barton said at breakfast this morning, the average age of a S&P 500 company these days, 18 years. 55% of those on the Fortune 500 weren't there 20 years ago. So the fact that the two of you have made it for over 100 years. I mean,
we're the only one. We are the only one in tech that's made it. Yes.
Yeah, you.
We are the only one.
By the way, you mentioned a while back the bunch.
Yeah. I was just saying.
I
was reminded over the weekend as I'm a pretty voracious reader, and I was looking at things, and it was the 1960s and 70s, and the article was about the bunch, and it was Burroughs, Univac, NCR, CDC, and Honeywell. Of which, you know, and I'm reminded today when HP is no longer HP, others are consolidating, things are happening, and there have been many more in between that were going to be there. But some do. I mean, so industries do reorder, and there'll be some that come and some that go, but there is that one common thing. We are the one time and time again.
Yeah, so John, help me, tell me how you think about this, because when you listen to that mantra that Ginni just repeated, always disrupt yourself, don't let your products define you, don't be...
Place big bets. Steward for the long term.
Place big bets.
He's a great role model of a number of those, by the way.
But you know,
right.
we think of...
She's right in all of that.
Yeah.
We think of your bank as being conservative, cautious. Some people even say boring, which... when
boring.
It's the
There's nothing boring about me, let me tell you. Well,
but so how do those things fit together?
Yeah. I think companies that get in trouble about their future lose the understanding of reason and result. What's the reason that 265,000 get up in the morning? It's different than the result. The result is we make money. The reason is we try to provide products and services that'll help our customers succeed. 18 years ago, we didn't have an internet offering. Al Gore had invented it. We had not heard about it, you know, in Minnesota, where I was from. Geez, it's a stuffy crowd, but come on, guys, that's as good as it gets here. 5 years ago, we didn't have a mobile offering. I don't know what it'll be tomorrow, but there are a litany of companies who protected the result. They protected, and I don't want to name them here because we all know who they are, and they are now nothing but footnotes in history. So what Ginni and I have to do, and we try to do, is anticipate what is it that our customers will want tomorrow, the next day, 10, 20, and 30 years, and even might be cannibalizing some of your results. So there has to be that intellectual honesty, and I say, capacity to suffer short-term results for long-term.
Have you had to do that? Have you disrupted yourself at Wells?
We all do that. Sometimes it happens, it's easy to do that when the short-term results are really good. It's hard to do that when the short-term results are not so good, and you need to make some significant bets, big bets, intelligent bets for the future. I mean, if we didn't make those bets, we'd have stagecoaches on the freeway.
But I don't recall people talking like this 20 years ago. I'll bet none of your predecessors said always disrupt yourself, which is kind of a revolutionary concept when you think about it.
I'm not sure they might have used those exact words. I think there is one thing different today, and the one is the speed of change. That sounds a bit sort of like a trite saying to say, but there is, in my mind, no doubt. When I look at technology, and I would go back several years and I would say, if I asked everyone in this room who wants to be a digital company, how many people would raise their hand? If you're honest, you have a company. Who would? No one? We have a room of
There's somebody back there, but I could be itchy. I don't know.
Okay.
The question is,
how many people think their company should also be a digital company?
Should your company be a digital company? Raise your hand. I don't think they understood.
There you go. Sorry, my English. So should you be a digital company? And I think underpinning that and why it's everybody, there are these technology shifts. You have cloud, you have big data, you have mobility, and what's different, I think, in this moment in time, and when you go to compare it, is there are three, and they're happening at the same time, and that has accelerated the pace of change.
The three
I just said: cloud, data, mobility. And I think there's a fourth about in front of us. And so that rate of pace and change, that is different. But if I go back and look at the news, and I was saying to Alan earlier, I said I was doodling around and reading a lot of stuff on the weekend, and I found an article written on 2000, November 2000, sort of almost to the day where we are now. And I could have sworn it was written today. And it was about how one set would obliterate another set, and that the amount of change and the disruption that was happening. So I actually do think they would have talked of disruption, but I think the rate of pace of it is far more, and it's far more active on business models today.
You agree with that, John?
Absolutely. In fact, like I said, 5 years ago, we did not have a mobile offering. Today, over half of our customers are mobile, and not only are they mobile, it's our number one predominant channel. If we weren't in the mobile business, we would be out of business. So that happened in 5 years. Our industry hadn't changed that much in the last 500 years. And today we have to be real-time, digitized, using data, mobile, and have to provide intelligent solutions to people on the go. So I mean, it's changed so rapidly.
And when things are changing that fast, standard business school question, who's your most dangerous competitor? How do you think about that question? Who is your most dangerous competitor? Is it someone you see out there or someone?
Look, I think that is dangerous. I think the answer is you are defined by your clients. You are not defined by your competition. Now, does that mean you are not respectful? But I think in today's age, we all live at this intersection of business and technology. And so on one hand, you could say it's any company. On the other hand, I think we also live in a world where your biggest competition is a new business model. And so a new business model
somebody you don't see
can come from, or can be from someone you see, can be yourself, can see from others. And I think that sort of the attributes of a business model that are persistent today that weren't before would be things like partnerships, right? I mean, I know people made a big deal when we partnered with Apple as an example, but we've gone on, whether it be Apple or Box or Twitter or Facebook, and the list goes on. So partnerships, John mentioned data as a key piece, and then I think there's another idea of this whole point of competition and business model, which is platforms, that people will build more and more platforms upon which they'll interact with others.
How about you, John? Who's your most dangerous competitor? We have Jamie Dimon here on Wednesday. Do you want to?
They're a terrific company. I think, I'll turn the question around though. The people who influence us the most are outside our industry. The IBMs, the Amazons, the Apples, they take complexity and make it simple. They're changing the way people deal with retailers, the way they deal with their daily lives. And that has huge influence. I mean, think about this. If we can't tell a customer exactly what's in their account, after they've had a 25-year relationship with them, and they can find out anything they want in the world in 3 nanoseconds on Google. How do we look in comparison? Yeah. So there is a mindset and a shift going on there that's not happening by any one industry or any one company, but it's a collective thought process that's changing all of us.
See, I think this point about consumerization that has influenced what everyone does, and there are many people in the room that have established companies, but I know as an example, everything we do, whether it's B2B or B2C, really the word is B to individual, B to I, and that what you do is you've got to put this idea of design thinking in everything you do. So no matter what it is, it's got to be made so that no instructions required, no matter what you do and how you interact with that. And in my own company, we today have 10,000 designers, right? And for even my own internal consumption, the actual real design, we hire 500 a year now. And so these are not the typical folks you would think, right? But it's because everything you do has got to be consumable to the point that John just said.
I have 2 standing meetings a month that I will never miss. One is on cybersecurity on the defensive side, because what we go to market with every day is trust. People trust that the digits they see on their phone, if they get print, whatever, that it's there. And on the offensive side, it's all the things that allow for the platforms to provide on the offensive side, whether it be mobility, digitization, whatever it is.
New things.
New things. New things. New ways of authenticating.
So, another interesting thing about the two of you is that you are both basically lifers with the company you work for. I mean, in a way, you're talking about industries conflating.
Makes it sound like a prison.
Jeez,
I meant that in a good way.
I do feel old.
You're talking about all these industries crossing over, coming together. You've worked at IBM pretty much your whole career. You worked at Norwest and Wells Fargo pretty much your whole career. Is that in this world that's changing so rapidly and ideas are coming at you from so many different directions, is that a good model? Is that an advantage? Is it a disadvantage that you've had to fight against?
I think it is. Actually, I think it can be good and it can be bad depending on where you are. And so you have to balance those things. Good in that you know how to change an organization and work with it, what it's capable of at its soul. I mean, because I think part of what it is that we do is, I would say, you have to have the wisdom to know what must endure and what must change. And so, because you build on top of that. On the other hand, extremely open to things and ideas on the outside. And so, I look at our company with almost 400,000 people, and greater than 50% are millennials. 81% of the hiring millennials. I don't think people think of all that new idea coming in, and many folks from the outside blended together. And so I think that is a fact of life of how we live, is that these ideas come from all different places and you have to embrace them.
You have to be open to them.
And you have to be open to them. I mean, and I think part of what drove that for us is, now, even in my tenure, I think I've done close to 40 acquisitions, right? And we've done 150 over the past 10 years. You've got to embrace these different ideas to move forward. And so I think that doesn't matter what industry that you are in, and it's how you balance those things.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I'm where Ginni is. I think that it can be a strength and a weakness. I think the more important thing is the culture of the company. Do you have a learning culture? And do you have a collaborative culture, and a culture that's willing to disagree without being disagreeable? And if you have those attributes, no one person's going to have all the information. It really is a team sport. But the companies that are, I think, the most enduring, the ones that have the best chance at winning in the future, have the ability to be able to reinvent in a way that's managed chaos. And you can do that with people you trust.
I want to come back to, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that I have learned over time, and I've credited John with this many times, because when I had first become CEO, I had gone and talked to John a lot about, because he has done a great job with the culture of Wells. And I could give, I think, the speech of importance here about employee engagement.
Correct.
And how the engaged employee drives the client experience and drives your results, not the other way around.
Correct.
And he's done a masterful job with that, and that's why Wells has, last time I looked, it was 6 or 7 products per customer,
per
right?
customer.
Versus the average in the industry is maybe 2
or 3.
2 or 3. I'm giving his talk, and a wonderful job on this. And so I want to fast forward to, you said, well, how do you drive change? In some ways, I often think about our jobs as the chief engagement officer,
Yeah.
right? Not CEO, chief exec, chief engagement officer. And in this day and age, with the kind of social tools within our own companies, your ability to react and interact with so many and get the truth about, I always say it takes me like a nanosecond to find something out because of the way all the structure kind of goes away with these tools. And now you open that up and those channels up and an ability to drive change. And I don't think that should be underestimated as a way to harness these large workforces.
How much of your time do you spend communicating in that engagement with the
I bet you 20 or 25%. I mean, I leave tomorrow morning to go to Charlotte, and I'm going to do a town hall. I do a town hall every quarter.
Yeah.
And it's webcasted, and whenever it's alive with a couple of thousand people, any question's a good question. And if you can get large groups of people to be moving in the same direction, but not lose their critical thinking and their critical challenge to the process, in that, there's magic in that.
See, I think this is an era where
Just
you
on the percentage, 25% more?
Oh, probably a little bit more even. I mean, I even, every first Friday of every month, we do something called Think Academy. IBM's motto originally in the time was Think. And as we've been going through all this change in our strategy, which was a digital foundation around data, cloud, mobility, security, and now going to cognitive, I mean, every first Friday of every month, I teach it. And so it's,
I thought you'd say going to church. We used to go to church every first Friday.
No. It's the largest, probably the largest MOOC in the world, actually, that actually operates. And so I think that's a part of what interactive, right? I'm teaching, I can see what everybody's saying at the same time, good or bad, what they say. And it's part of how to engage a workforce. So you have these social tools to do this engagement. And the word I was going to say, Ellen, was co-create. I think as you talk about the next millennial workforce that we both have, they live in a world of co-creation. And so we just redid all of our performance management. And it was co-created with the entire workforce, right, on what it is that we would do. They voted, they looked, they saw the pros, the cons. And so now they'll adopt it and you'll get execution on scale.
Yeah. So one of the reasons we decided to do this Fortune Global Forum in San Francisco, the previous 12 forums have been done outside of the United States. We did this in San Francisco because we heard from so many CEOs who said, we want to understand what's happening in the startup culture. I mean, we now have, 142 unicorn companies that have been funded by venture capital and have market values over $1 billion. And sometimes it seems like the rules of the road for that world and for some of the West Coast technology companies are different than the rules that the two of you have to live by. How do you think about that world, the Silicon Valley growth tech companies?
Well, I'll go.
Yeah, I can start.
I'll follow him.
I moved here 13 years ago, and at the time there was almost a demilitarized zone at the airport. Everything south was Silicon Valley. Everything north was something else.
Yeah.
And today, you wouldn't know where one stops, another stops. We have companies as great as Salesforce headquartered here, and there's a ton of other ones that were small companies at one time, which now become large companies. And that magic of working together really has made a difference. I don't know that, sure, those companies that are small and have different things day to day, but we're all in the leadership business. We're all trying to create a customer solution to something, either present or the future, and we're looking to engage the constituents that matter. Communities, customers, team members, ultimately shareholders. So.
Yeah, now there is a difference in the shareholders. I mean, the shareholders of tech companies are looking for growth. IBM has had 14 straight quarters of decline, managed decline.
Yes, managed. I mean, I would, because there's a couple differences. I mean, let me deal with this one first, and then another I would suggest is that one is it's really knowing what you are and what your value proposition is. I feel really good we are about enterprise innovation, and it is about moving to higher value. Now, higher value doesn't mean, gee, I'm going to cling on to something and charge more, or that John is going to pay more for. They're very good negotiators. That's not what that means. It means you know that you have to keep reinventing yourself and moving on to the next thing. And that's what it is we do. And so you have shareholders, both clients that know what you do for them is not only do the new, but what I would say, he's got core banking systems. It's core systems. These are not commoditized. They have to modernize. They have to be more efficient, but they're not going away tomorrow.
Correct.
They are critically important. but those are not necessarily high growth areas. So I think, Alan, are there different rules? I think it's a different business model. In our case, if I look back over the last decade, you'll find IBM's growth was flat to 1% and the profit doubled to tripled in that time frame. It's because it's a business model to move to higher value, and while the water level stays constant, what's underneath it changes. And that's how, but that is the business model we chose. And so, as I say to my own team in managing through a time of change and transformation, I keep them sort of focused on perspective that says, look guys, you're a $90 billion company, margins improving, but the portfolio's 30% different than it was before. And that's why when IBM started making cheese slicers, that's not what we do anymore. We've gone through 10 different renovations in moving to higher value. So that is, I would trade that off, the move to higher value versus growth. We have growth in the right places, because of course, some of the new businesses, they've in aggregate, they're ended last year at $25 billion, and they grew greater than 30% through the first 9 months of the year, right? So it depends where the growth is.
And I want to talk about the new businesses, but you were going to add something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the hardest thing for investors, not investors so much, but surely analysts, is to focus on what are the real genetic compounds of long-term shareholder value creation. And so many times people look at the top line or the bottom line, and they miss what's really, in our business, more customers, more deposits, more loans, deeper relationships is the winning combination. Sometimes that doesn't show up in the top line in growth or the bottom line because of external factors, at least in our business. We have low interest rates. It's undervalued. But if we weren't focused on those things and helping those things happen, ultimately nothing happens out here. So when people say, geez, you're not growing, and people want growth out of our business also, they look at the intermediate step, they don't look at the initial step. So like Ginni said, there might be some businesses growing really well in things, don't show up yet because over-investing or needed over-investment or whatever, it's not mature, or whatever the case is, that these are really powerful business models.
Yeah.
But I would flip your question as well, though, and say, what's there to also learn from a startup world, right? And I think this idea about speed is a big deal. And that is whether or not you're a small company or a startup company. I think there's many lessons about how that kind of company operates that are applicable in big companies. And so
and it's hard
I think that's a valuable.
It's hard in big companies.
It is, but I think there's really some very good practical things you can do. You know, we were saying that when people typical in a company, people say, well, I have a budget and I spend an amount. Well, you can instead, if you were in a small business, startup, capital, they'd say, here's money. Where there's an outcome, there's more money. I mean, you can run the same way in a big company. So I think there's ways to pull all this in to learn from.
I want to open it up in just a second because we've got a lot of CEOs out there in the audience who I know have different perspectives on this. And I warn you, I may cold call on you and make you jump in. So run from the room if you don't want that to happen. But before I do that, Ginni, you sort of dropped a tease a minute ago. You said that there were these three big disruptive shifts, digital, cloud, and mobile, and then you said there was a fourth.
Yes. Yeah, allow me, I'll just, because I do really believe so strongly on this, and you heard it even in some of John's words when he was describing what they were doing. And I said, you know, this world, if you go back, even the last couple of years, we talk about cloud, data, mobility, we all talk about that. It's digital. And I said, it's a foundation. You must do those things. For us, I said a minute ago, those were $25 billion last year, growing at 30% this year. Big business. But it is a foundation. And when everybody becomes digital, what next? And there is a fourth era. And I really believe it is right upon us, called cognitive. And it is a business era and a technology era. It is now living in a world where you can create a business that learns. And it is because of these systems that you don't program them. They both understand all sorts of information, and heck, 80% of information in the world is actually dark to computers. They actually don't know what it is. It's a song, it's a video. What does it really mean? And so they can understand it, they reason, and they learn. And the world is rewritten in code. As a result, you'll infuse learning in any product, any service, anything we do. So to me, this fourth trend has got the capability to be most disruptive and most transformative.
How long is it going to take?
It'll play for a decade or more out in front of us, right? And I see it with clients already from the beginning. And I said, I was telling Alan, a client that is doing work Watson was one of the first of these things out there that actually it learns over time. I have an insurance company who they're now out and live in 34 different states. Because when someone is filling out an insurance form, the interaction, it's helping them. It knows them, knows what to do. He's telling them, giving their context, how to look at this, how to answer. The closure rate on that insurance, I just said, and the client sent me a note this weekend, is 10 points higher than their base closure rate. Now, they're already world class. 10 points, that's a different economic base. I've got another world-class retailer on a supply chain, and it is, again, in a pretty big pilot. Sales, 2 to 10 points higher, margins 2 to 5. Already world-class. This idea that you will learn and then it can actually, in that time, infuse, whether it's a product and service, whether it would be how you do engagement, you scale expertise, how you run an operation, how you do discovery. I think there's a wonderful opportunity in front of us, and that is the fourth shift. It builds on the others, but it's.
This is what Watson is all about.
Well, Watson would be sort of the hero in that story, in one element of it, but it is about actually changing your business model, and that's what to me is so exciting.
Questions or comments? John, can I put you on the spot? Because I know GE is wrestling with a lot of these same issues. If you could give John Rice the microphone. What have you heard here that resonates with your own experience at General Electric?
Well, if I pick up on Ginni's last comment, I think that this notion of digital, mobile, cognitive is clearly where we see it going. We think all industrial companies have to become digital companies, and digital companies will, in some way or another, become industrial companies. So for us, it's the third leg of the stool. It's been equipment for 140 years and services for 30 years, and now digital for the rest of our lives.
See, I know very few people who have a product that don't want it to be a service, right? Because for some basic economic reasons. One is that it develops an annuity relationship with a customer that you get closer and deeper with and over time. So I think all these things fuel these different business models that are quite common sense why they're there.
When the product puts off information and the information goes to a cognitive system.
We have we've formed the Watson Health platform. And this is why we've done some acquisitions, about 100 million medical records, 30 billion images. We have analytics, customers bring it, and their data. So what is a J&J doing? Healthy knees. Instead of just selling you the knee piece, instead it's a relationship that says, what are the things you should do before your knee gets replaced, when it happens, after, that turns it into a service. And so whether it's them or it's Medtronic with the diabetes pump, or whether it is CVS and a mini clinic that they have, everybody, I think, is going to start to move to that world.
Alan, I would just say that for most service businesses, our primary product is information. You simply can't be in the information business if your stuff's old. You can't be in the second-day batch processing of paper. Yeah. And if your information is going to have any value add to it, it has to be real-time, intuitive. It has to be enriched with the way you use your data, and I absolutely agree with the cognitive. You just got to get over the digitizing of your enterprise. It has to be there. It's a ticket to play in virtually everything.
Everything.
I can't imagine a company that can hide the ball.
Mark Benioff, can I put you on the spot? Give a West Coast perspective. Not that John isn't from the West Coast, but he came out on that Wells Fargo the Pony Express.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, John, thank you for the call out. I appreciate it.
I didn't even see you. I would have done it more formally if I had seen you there.
I would just reinforce what you're saying, and I speak to this from the technology industry point of view, which is that we're in the age of the customer. The customer experience has become paramount. That's number one for all of us right now. You've proven that. You've rebuilt all of your customer experiences. I appreciate that partnership. And we have the opportunity as we move into the Internet of Things and that everything is getting connected to build these incredibly high-fidelity one-on-one relationships with these customers. And it's not about the technology. It's hard for me to say that, being a technologist in a technology company. It's not about the cloud. It's hard for me to say that. It's not about service. It's hard for me to say that or have an annuity. It's about the customer relationship, and it's about that one-on-one. And I think that when you said that, I tweeted it actually, which was that.
There you go.
Did
you use the Fortune Global hashtag?
I did. I got you covered, Alan. No, you owe me, all right? But I think that's, and I think we have to reconceptualize how we think about the world, that we have to pivot to the customer. We've been pivoted too long to the shareholder, pivoted too long maybe at times even to the employees, pivoted too long to other stakeholders in the company. We have to pivot back to the customer. And I think that you articulated that really well. And I think if we don't do that, and if we don't double down on that, we're not going to be able to fully maximize our customer value.
Yeah, Mark, I agree. And we do business with 1 in 3 Americans. And I've never heard one of our prospects or customers say to me, geez, I bank with you because you're so big and I'm so unimportant to you, I'm just a number. I'm number 122,553. I've never heard that. They all say, I'm a customer set of 1. I'm unique. You should know me. Yeah. You should help me. You should reward me. And that's what they want. It's almost like going into a museum where you see that photograph and a picture, and the eyes keep following you. Customers want that kind of intimacy with their providers.
Is size, we were talking about this earlier, is size an advantage or a disadvantage? I mean, here we are, I think HP is splitting into today or tomorrow. Alcoa is going to split into. On the other hand, we have these massive mergers, Pfizer and where's David Pyatt? Pfizer and Allergan. You can tell us about that one. Or Walgreens and Rite Aid. Is size a good thing, a bad thing, or it depends?
I think it depends. I don't think size is a strategy. In fact, I think you've got to have a strategy first, and then size supports it or doesn't in what it is that you do. And in fact, if you take a look at certain businesses, I mentioned earlier, we had sold our semiconductor manufacturing business. It was subscale, better with someone else. That's where you'd say, okay, someone in a commoditizing business, something that is really scale-based, you'd put it with someone else and reallocate your capital somewhere else. On the other hand, if you need size because your pieces need to be integrated for a client and a client wants it, then size is going to make a difference.
That 1 out of every 3 Americans banking with you is not a bad statistic.
It's not a bad deal, but if we don't do it, we have 12,000 customer interactions a minute in our company. Even if we do it right, 99.99% of the time right, we do it in aggregate, a lot of people get disappointed. For them, it's 100% wrong. So scale, I agree with everything Ginni said. I think scale can matter, and does matter in some cases, but you have to be nimble enough. The biggest challenge I think we all fight is our lack of nimbleness in a very nimble value society.
We have a question right back here.
Alan, I'd like to follow up on a point that you made. Ginni and John, you're both lifers in your company. Could you talk specifically on a personal level what you do to keep refreshing yourself, to alter your view of the world, to keep yourself up to date, to not get myopic in your industry and in your company?
Yeah, well, I for one, I am a voracious reader, so anything and everything, I drive my teams nuts with.
Any magazines you particularly like?
Yeah, of course. Anything that starts with an F, and so, I am voracious in magazine that starts with an F. I am voracious with that, but I think it is more about where you choose to spend your time. Whether clients of all kinds, partners of all kinds. But the other thing, I want to go back to something I said earlier, the social aspect of how you communicate with everyone and flattens your company completely. I'm telling you, hear things from all different alleys and ways. So between clients, a ton of time. That's how I know John so very well. And so, but between clients being voracious, you've got to be willing to be curious. I guess that's the bottom line word, right? It is curious, 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 and get your information from anywhere. So it's probably not too different than what you do, I would suspect, right?
Yeah, I'm the same place where Ginni is. I read 8 or 10 newspapers a day, only read parts of them. I call a team member and a customer or prospect unannounced every day. Yeah. So I get, because by the time things come to me through 5 levels of management, even shoe polish tastes like ice cream by the time it gets to me. It's all so sweetened over, but I do get some strange responses. I'll call up, I'll say, is this Bill whatever? And he'll say, yeah, sure, this is John Stumpf. Who put you up to this, And they'll be, it's like, but anyway, but I think you have to continue to learn. There's an old saying, give someone a fish, they eat for a day. Teach them other fish, they eat for a lifetime. Teach them how to learn. They'll eat more than just fish.
Yeah.
You know, and every great leader I know has a good sense of humility and humbleness in their idea that they don't know everything. So we're always learning.
Ginny, John, you've gotten us off to a great start. Thank you very much. A lot there to chew on.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Round of applause.